What's up? Hello. Yeah, I'm just gonna do a video on sort of week one Sapphire Steel because that's what this channel is about, and I've got a few lists to sort of cover. I was thoroughly surprised actually how excited I am for set seven. Um, I don't know, maybe I was quite public on Twitter, but um, a lot of places like Discord and stuff, I was quite upset. I've sort of thought Sapphire Coil was such an overwhelming card. It's going to get to a point where there's no reason to not play Ruby Sapphire, and I'm just going to have to build a Ruby Sapphire list to play during set 7. But I don't believe that's the case. There's been quite a bit of testing done. There's quite a few decks as well. I don't think just Sapphire Steel and Ruby Sapphire will be that dominant. I think it will be a meta very much based around those two decks. Um, they will take a very much a centerpiece because of just how amazing the Sapphire cards are. So I think the end result of the meta will be a very much a few different versions of Sapphire Steel, a few different versions of Ruby Sapphire, and then a lot of other decks that will trying to beat those two decks as consistently as they can, and maybe not lose points in other matchups and stuff. But I think overall it'll be a very Sapphire orientated meta, which I don't mind because it means Sapphire Steel actually gets some more playability. But I don't think it's gonna be a bad one. I think a lot of people will view it as a bad one, as one they don't enjoy, but I think we've got a lot going on there. And I've managed to get some testing in some great players, and even got to do some games with Sailor as well. And yes, Ruby Sapphire, very powerful. It probably will be the deck that has the best matchup spread. But with a few standouts, I think there's a yellow green deck, the Lady and the Tramp deck. I think that's very aggro based, very much a pain for them. It's not even just double one. It's not even triple one dropping by turn three. It can go further with that and play even more one drops and just go wider. Meaning cards like Coil into Little Sisu into Brawl doesn't really do anything for them. It has to be the big Sisu, but by that point they've lost. There's some really interesting decks that are affecting it, so it is without its faults. It can be defeated. Of course, then like a Lady and the Tramp yellow green deck would just die to all the steel decks. But it's very interesting. We're getting that like Kryptonite deck again for Ruby Sapphire, which I liked, which used to be the hyper aggro Amethyst Amber deck. So I'm just going to talk about the meta a little bit more before I jump into these lists. We used to have that sort of Kryptonite deck that was the Amethyst Amber deck that would destroy Ruby Sapphire, and now this new Lady and Tramp deck looks like it could do quite a good job of that. I think Purple still as well. All of its burn cards is like the new Hydra Giant Cobra card. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Giant Cobra. That's really cool. That's doing a lot of work into it. And then I think that could also hold some points into other matchups because it is a steel deck. A lot of the Ruby Sapphire decks as well are cutting the big towers, so as long as you play Zeus in your steel list, you can have a very good answer to all of their majority of their big threats, like their 6-cost Hammer Tower, their Maui Shark, and then clear up the Sisu after it's played with a Zeus or whatever. So yeah, it's just quite an interesting meta. I think there's going to be loads of different fun builds on Sapphire Steel. So I've just got a few lists here that have piqued my interest, and I think we'll definitely see a lot of these played in week one. I've had Joshua Satterfield's on my screen for a little bit now. It's the one that a lot of people were tweeting about, a lot of people were playtesting and said it's broken. I've got this thing. I think the list is really great. I think it's really good fun. There is a thing I found. I don't actually know Joshua Satterfield. I don't know how much Sapphire Steel he played before, but we've got a lot of non-Sapphire Steel players jumping over to the color combo and sort of approaching the deck building with a different light. Maybe like if you're a Ruby Amethyst player and you were playing Sapphire Steel, you might bring few different thoughts or whatever. Like I say, I'm sorry, I don't know what this gentleman used to play or if he always was a Sapphire Steel player. But I think it's really really helpful for us, to be honest with you. There's another list in here as well by Artabax where he's approached the deck very differently and cut a lot of the sort of ingrained laws we've had of Sapphire Steel deck building and kind of cut them out for now. They might come back in, the must include cards and stuff like that. And I think they perform very well. I've done them in testing. I've tried to approach all of this with an open mind as well. Kind of like I'm fresh at looking at Sapphire Steel for the first time as well. Maybe just like a little bit of knowledge of playing the deck for so long. But we've got some really interesting lists like this one. Getting that Scrooge out, Scrooge is really good. I think Ruby Sapphire does utilize the Scrooge quite a bit more. This is a very just insanely proactive deck. As you can see, there's no Tinkerbell, no grab your swords, and that's my point I'm trying to make of telling a Sapphire Steel player to not play Tinkerbell or grab your swords at any quantity. It's just madness. Like, we would never have done that before. But these approaches are really good. This is very proactive, whereas the standard ramp Sapphire Steel has been a very reactive deck, where it wants you to do something, then it will react with the Tinkerbell and the grab your swords, Hades, let it go, Big Simba, cards like that, and then it will fight back, and then it will close the game out with a dime. So doing the same game plan that Ruby Sapphire does, but we do it with Steel. This one is just constantly, I'm going to throw things at you. You got the big Tamato, you got Scrooge, you got loads of items there. Maurice's Workshop for those longer game plans. Bell versus those aggro decks where you just want to sort of slow them down a little bit so you can get to your ramp. But yeah, I think there's loads going on that's fun. Right at the start, I remember everyone was testing this, that it was broken. I believe people said it was like, what's the point of playing any other deck? This deck's so good. I don't know where people stand with it now. I still think it's very good. I think you could take this in week one, and then edit it as you go and like as the meta evolves. But yeah, that's just the first one there. I think it's really cool, and like I say, breaking the sort of common rulings that we've had with Sapphire Steel and like how you would design it with Tinkerbell and stuff like that. This is all just a very proactive rushing to game. You can't fight the board as well as you could if you had a Tinkerbell, but I still think that's fine. You're just going to constantly make them have to answer your things. So very interesting list. And then we've got a more like conventional one. Like I say, this is what you'd expect from. This is from Nels, who's a player I quite respect. Whenever I see him perform, he always does consistently quite well. Always makes like a cut, or just always does good results. So I think if you want to see his lists, I quite respect them and take in what I see. Um, so like I say, it's very conventional, very much the standard. You have got that Tinkerbell and the grab your swords in there, and you're sticking with the aerial Tamato and the dime for finish. And yeah, this is actually what I'd expect from quite a veteran Sapphire Steel wheel player to play going into set 7. They're just kind of taking the upgraded cards, which is like Bell. We just know Bell's going to be good. Tamatoa seems very good for tempo and very good for Sapphire Steel, because we can get them items into the discard a lot easier than Ruby Sapphire could, because we're going to pop a Bell to put a Pawp in, maybe a Hiram along the way, and then Tamatoa to get 2 back, which is just really good. Or, you might even wheel, and then you'll have a bunch of items in discard, and Tamatoa can retrieve them for you. So yeah, this is definitely what I'd expect from a sort of a veteran player. I don't know if the Miss Bianca is sort of exploring things. The best play I've seen with that is that you can cheat out early. That card is when if you have an ally character in play, you may pay 2 less to play this character for 4 costs basically, instead of the 6 costs. So then she'd be able to sing grab your swords or whole new world, or the let it go even if you needed to. So there are some merits to that. Of course, playing a 5/5 that quests for 1 for 4 is the same as playing Scrooge McDuck, because I've just playing Kiwi for so long. But the benefit of her singing those higher expensive songs is kind of, I think, why you include her in the list. So it's interesting to see it tested out. Like, he's taken even more cards than I thought we could have done. Like, so we know the Bell, we know the Tamatoa is going to be good, but testing out things like Miss Bianca, and as well, this is a controlling sort of deck. So going into a week 1 with some staple cards that we know are good at controlling boards. I don't think you'd ever be that bad, that like poorly set off. I think maybe into Ruby Sapphire, but because you're not really controlling their board with cards like Tinkerbell and stuff like that, and the grab your swords and anything, and the twin fires. You're not really using that to control them. But everything else, I think it'd be good. Of course, as Ruby Sapphire's grown its popularity, that doesn't mean that all the Amber Steel diehards will not want to play their deck anymore. Of course, they will. Same with the Purple Steel. I think even Ruby Amethyst, like, that's probably got the most diehard fan base out of all of them. They're still going to want to play that deck and try it out. So yeah, definitely going into week 1, strong Sapphire Steel wheel conventional list is going to work very well, and then we're putting in some cards there that we know have just got a crazy value, like Bell. Just on paper, you knew Bell was going to be a good card. And then I had a crack at myself. I think this is just ultra standard, pretty much the same as the other list. Just cutting the big Tamatoa. It's always in Sapphire Steel, like deck building. Like big Tamatoa has been kind of preference based, more than anything. Like, you need a good healthy amount of dime targets, which I think I've got with the aerial. I think that should be fine. Focusing in more on aerial and Pete. But yeah, overall I think this is just a like cookie cutter list that you could take out and then like start tweaking it, and definitely start tweaking it and putting in the things that you're expecting and things you're seeing at your local meta, like oh, I've got green steel in here, maybe I need that fire the cannons instead of the twin fire. Or maybe there's a lot of Ruby Sapphire, and you need some like Hades or Let It Goes, or like maybe you even need more things. Like we've got the Beasts in there. Like this is a bit more towards the Ruby Sapphire because, as I said, I'm pretty much expecting to see a lot of it. So I think you really have to think about that matchup going into week one. But yeah, and this is very much just this was just my go at like a very cookie cutter wheel list that you'd make for week one. But yeah, not much to think about that. I think probably should have looked at my list before I looked at Nell's one because I think his one is just a lot better than mine. But yeah, that's what I think you could easily just take this, play a week one, and go right. What I need to do is tech in these cards or include these cards. Maybe I do need this big Tamatars because like, oh wait a minute, everyone's playing Ruby Amethyst at my locals. I need to put this in, or maybe you put the Jim Hawkins in the 2 cost one because there's a lot of Amber Steel still around and you're getting Daisy rushed a lot. But yeah, I think this is just blueprint, and then you could work from it and make the text as you go. This is the list I've been the most excited about, and I'm very grateful it's fairly public. This one I've played it with a few different changes around, but the main core of this, we've tested it into. I to start it off to how much I'm going to sell it to you. I've never felt this confident versus Ruby Sapphire on the draw, which is just mad for a Sapphire Steel player to say because you tend to just really suck at that matchup, and on the draw it's pretty much unwinnable. But this build has been and crazy, and it's what I really like the idea that these two gentlemen here are Emerald Amethyst like players to the heart. They Artifacts as well as LD. They both play other decks. Like Artifacts went to Law League and won it with like RP. I've seen LD on tons of different lists, and I've tested with both of them, and he's played tons of different lists. They have a really good grasp of the game and like of the meta. But of course, Emerald Amethyst is like if they had to pick a deck, that's like their deck. So it's lovely to see like players like that come over to this color combo and approach it differently. Of course, you see things like Cogsworth just drop straight away. I think Arbax did say he's very much thinking about the RB matchup in this one, but yeah, the way it feels going into RB, even on the draw on the play, you are applying this constant pressure. The Captain Hook, really, his main thing is that he's the character that quests on turn one, and we don't have any 2 questers on one with Sapphire Steel. That's just the deal you get with the color combo. But you can get the smear out, and then you can protect the damage on it. So if you're playing like against a DKP list, they couldn't goofy it. Tipo won't finish it off after it's quested twice. So that one damage is good. That is standing upright, and as they deal with it, it can take out a Tala, it can do some work. Along the way, you could pop a Bell early instead, put some pressure out. I think Alice could swapped out for like a Lawrence or something like that, but as long as it's a free cost that quests for 2, I think it's fairly fine. Just Lawrence is going to trade up a lot nicer than Alice is on the draw, especially as they'll establish their character. And then your question, and then they'll just hit into it and take it out if they have the Tipo and the Tala. Whereas with the Lawrence, they can still do the same thing. It's just going to be a bit more awkward. And of course, if you have Bell out and she sings "Let the Storm Rage On," you can protect your Lawrence a little bit longer as well. Even to a Maui, you put it on 1 health, and then it's only a "Let the Storm Rage On" removal, or run a Calhoun or something like that just to finish it off and get your 2 law. But yeah, just applying constant pressure, 2 quester, 2 quester. Refresh, get the hand a little bit more going. You can play a Hiram if you want. There's no docks in here, which I thought was really good. Of course, I've just been loving Doc since set 6. It's kind of hard for me to drop Doc. And of course, that comes into that thing of I'm such in this mindset of I love this card. No, I want this card to work. But when you've got a new player who approaches the deck, goes, no, I don't think Doc fits here that well because this is the reason why. And he stated that I want to do things like preserve the Pete in my hand and I want to preserve the other cards in my hand, but I can't do that if I'm having to dump in the Inkwell or dump on board, then play the Doc. So instead, I want to just play a bit of a resource war a bit, so refresh the hand a bit around turn 4. Turn 5, what I kind of noticed you doing is you get the manas out, or you maybe just keep working on that hand size with the Hiram, or double spell, even if not, or maybe play some board removal games, just to get the board into a bit more of an awkward spot. Turn 5, I mean, that Gantu is there, but I wouldn't say that is your turn 5. I'd probably say actually Gantu could go in the end. It's kind of a bit harder to invest in that character, especially if they play Quill on, like, they play the Coil, sorry, and then they ink and then they just brawl it. Like, it's just nuts how easy that Gantu's dropped off, in my opinion, in this set, which is so sad because, of course, he's been a card I've been advocating and loving for so long, but I think he has fallen off a little bit. A lot of cards need to either be really cheap questers or like they're gonna stick or it's very hard to invest in a big quester right now, I think, is the problem. But I'm not going to go over that too much. And then, yeah, you get to refresh the hand with this, get your pop scores back. So you've got some more gas to keep going, play some more Hyrems. But it's very hard to talk about it because I haven't played it too much. I played a couple nights of testing of it, and it's very strong against decently skilled players as well. It's not like I've just gone on a low ranked Lorcanito game and done it. Like it's pretty well performing players. But it's this thing of you can get the McDuck manners down, and then you can just protect them with the Zeus, the Strength, the Let the Storm Rage on, and then as well, as long as you could sing those Zeuses, which would be great. You can hardcast them as well. It's fine. You'll just need to like hardcasting a Zeus to take out a shark. I think is a very fair play. Like it's pretty good value wise. They spent 6 ink, you spent 4, and if you got the mana out, you're still getting lore the next turn. And then, but if you were able to sing it or you had ink left over to start applying pressure to the board, because say you'll be at 6 ink because of this Tamatoa, you can hardcast the Zeus, play a Smee, your mana is still up. It's requiring now two different interactions because you got a location and a character out to deal with you from gaining that 2 lore next turn. And then, of course, you've applied enough pressure at the start that you should be at 10, 12 lore or whatever, and then by this point you'd just be getting the manas over the line. Um, if they do a play where they say, I won't be able to do this mana, but maybe next turn I can because I'll develop these characters like a Maui and then enough other character facing damage to finish it off with whatever thing, a Tala or however you look at it. You just play another mana because there's 4 manas in the list, and then it's just like now I'm going to gain 4 lore and you've got to do double the work, and I'm probably going to sling another Zeus at you. And I think the list could go up in Zeus counts because it does get into that RB matchup, and I think maybe Ruby Amethyst as well. You'd just the Ruby matchups. You'd be in a similar spot where it just protect the manas and sling the Zeuses out. I think in the build on the screen, it might have a weaker game into other steel matchups, but I think you could definitely shore that up. Of course, you can only predict what a week one meta is going to be like, and Ruby Sapphire has been the one that's hyped the most. So that's probably what you'd be prepping for the most, but I think you can still prep for the other steel matchups by upping the Let the Storm Rage ups and upping another Zeus, getting rid of some of the weaker cards like Gantu. This Tinkerbell doesn't need to be in here either. Doesn't really protect much, I think. But overall, yeah, I think this has a really surefire way of being the direction that the the Sapphire Steel aggro. I'm not going to call this Kiwi because this is his entire creation by himself. But that style of deck, well, we're not using the ramp aspects of Sapphire Steel. We're using the aggression. We're using these really powerful Sapphire cards, and in this time it's now Bell instead of the Alice, and the Tamatoa and Mukduk Manas are still sticking around. Hiram as well for card draw to just pair it off. He's always been a really powerful card. Yeah, he's very easily answered by Ruby Sapphire, but sometimes you can play the game of if you don't answer it, it's really even bigger. And they might have been using earlier removal to deal with other things, so he might get to stick around. But yeah, protecting the manas just seems so big. Of course, they could play Cusco's hideaways. You've got Pete's, you've got stuff like that. Not on the Cusco, of course, but I don't know if they're going to be in that Cusco playing the Sapphire Cusco card. They might do, and then you'd have to rethink and approach the matchup again differently. But yeah, right now I really like the style of this. I think you could probably, my anticipation and what I want to probably do is meet quite in the middle of the Kiwi list that I've been working on, because I find that into like the rest of the field has just been such a stomp. Like it works so well with what it's doing. And then to Ruby Sapphire, it loses points quite a bit. I think you can still win on the play. Like 60-70% of the time, but it does lose the points here. Whereas this deck on the play, on the draw, it doesn't matter. It works very well into Ruby Sapphire, but I feel it might lose some points in other rooms. Into Purple Steel, it does feel like it performed very well. But it might lose points in other places, so it just needs some testing. I think it's finding that match in the middle where the deck, it doesn't have a weak steel matchup, it doesn't have a weak Ruby Sapphire matchup. It could maybe lose points in some things, like maybe into green steel. Maybe its discard matchup's not that good. I would take that personally, because discard's just not that popular in Europe. Like I never see it. It might lose points into something bizarre like that, like discard or like Mufasa decks or whatever, and I'll just accept that'll be where I'm at, and I'll lose to those decks. But having a strong points into Amber Steel and into Ruby Sapphire just seems very, very good right now. Just how powerful both those two decks are. I know Amber Steel didn't get much in the new set, but it's still not going anywhere. It's still singing its songs for a crazy cheap value, so it's still in the same deck. But yeah, I could definitely see a hybrid of Artifacts' sort of list, and I'd work on it with my sort of Kiwi list and try and meet in the middle to find this insanely good matchup spread, where you could go to an event quite confident that you'd 2-0, even seeing the most popular decks of the day. And then of course, even if I'm all right and everything proven there, everything I've said there is correct. You'd have to work on mirrors and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all theory, and that's the fun of card games. But yeah, definitely some lists I'd look at and check out. Check out their podcast as well. That'd be awesome. They do a really good talk about all this stuff and of Sapphire Steels and players in general. Yeah, we can be a funny bunch in 20 lore. I understand that. But yeah, if you still want to play a wheel player, totally fine with me. We're still going to see Lamb and Justin and Justin Morales and stuff like that performing very well playing wheel. So I'm pretty sure it still has the life in it to do that. Try out Satterfield's list. I think that's really cool. Maurice's Workshop, I think, is going to be a card a lot of people are going to be playing with week one. But if you're still feeling like you don't want to be ramping with Sapphire Steel, you really like the idea of Kiwi, please try a list out like this as well. And yeah, just I think all of these are pretty good ideas for that week one testing, that week one, that first league night, that first maybe winner, whatever. Uh, all great lists. So yeah,